College football now, coming up in just a few moments from right now. Before we do, though, I want to make sure that you are subscribed to Chat Sports as we cover the latest college football news, rumors, coaching hot boards, and more. And each week throughout the season, we're going to be covering college football like no one else is as we get you ready for the college football playoff. It'll be here before you know it. So why not go ahead and subscribe to us? No need to wait. Subscribe to the channel for the latest happenings in college football at youtube.com/chatsports. Welcome into College Football Now, powered by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. On today's show, I am going to break down my top 10 college football playoff rankings projection. Now, granted, we are still a couple weeks away from the very first college football playoff poll, but that doesn't mean that that's going to stop us from projecting what the playoff poll would be. And obviously, what we've done is tried to make this in the criteria that the College Football Playoff Committee goes by. And so we factored in everything from resume to eye test and everything in between. And I talked to some others to get an idea of how this should go. I summoned Tom Downey as well as James Yoder, who also cover college football here on Chat Sports. And ultimately, this was the consensus of where we were at as far as these rankings go for the top 10 if the college football playoff poll were to come out today heading into this week here in college football. Let's begin number one, and it's the Tennessee Volunteers who hold the top spot in our playoff poll this week. And look, whether you're buying into Tennessee or not, where they're at right now, they did everything that was asked of them against Alabama last week and beat a team that had Bryce Young. It wasn't like Alabama was shorthanded there. Bryce Young played a good game as well. And on top of that, it's the best win of anybody in college football this year. So that leaves us no choice but to put Tennessee as the number one team in our rankings at this point in time. Will they stay there? That remains to be seen. But what's interesting about Tennessee being in this position, we have talked a lot about on this channel of Georgia and Alabama being the teams to lead the way, right, in the SEC. Now that Tennessee's a part of the equation here, there's still an outside chance, folks. Now that Tennessee's involved, you could have not one, not two, but maybe even three SEC teams make the playoff. That's still possible in all this. It takes some finagling. Alabama would have to win out, and then Georgia would have to beat Tennessee, and Tennessee gets in as a one-loss team, and whatever, a few other things go one way or the other. But that's not out of the realm of possibility at this point, now that Tennessee has kind of crashed the party of sorts. Number two on our list is Georgia. And Georgia, you could argue, has looked like the most complete team in football this year. And when you look at the Georgia Bulldogs, this is a team that is just stacked, right? And even with all the guys that they lost last year, this Georgia team still found a way to reload this year and be a contender once again. Credit to Kirby Smart and company. I think everyone points to what they did against Oregon week one of just shutting down Bo Nix and that Oregon offense. Oregon's played a lot better since, and that win for Georgia continues to look better. They still have some tough tests ahead, but Georgia's our number two team. Our first team outside of the SEC is the Michigan Wolverines at number three. And we had an interesting discussion, a back and forth about whether Michigan or Ohio State should be that number three team. And although Ohio State is probably the more talented team on paper, Michigan's got the more impressive resume. That Penn State win was very impressive on their part. They looked good last week. A lot of talent on that Michigan team. Ohio State slides in at number four, and this is a situation that's going to work itself out, right? We're going to see these two teams play later on this year in Columbus, and there's no reason to be upset if you're an Ohio State fan seeing Michigan's ahead of you, because that's a situation you'll have the opportunity to prove otherwise and play itself out. So the question, who's in? This is our top four. If the playoff were to start today, we would go Tennessee, Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State as the top four making the playoff. We'll reveal the guys that are just outside of the playoff picture in just 1 second. Before we do, though, with Tennessee being our number 1 team in our playoff poll, what do you think about the Vols? Are you buying this team? Are they the best team in college football right now? Let me know in the comments section. You might get an ad break. If so, take advantage of it and get your votes in. Y for yes, in for no, if you think the Tennessee Volunteers are the best team in the country. Number 5 in our rankings, the first team out, is the Clemson Tigers. And Clemson this year, there was a very interesting expectation for this team to try to get back to not only the top of the ACC, but be in playoff contention after a down year last year. And I remember week 1, looking back at that Georgia Tech game, I know they pulled away late, but I was saying to myself, this team just doesn't look that impressive. And here they have at this point. They've won a couple top 25 games. They weren't the sexiest wins by any means, but they were wins nonetheless. I feel like I still don't really know who Clemson is that much because we haven't seen them play that next caliber of talent. We haven't seen them play a top 10 team, but they've done what's been asked of them so far to this point. That's what slides them in at number 5. Number 6 is our first one-loss team on the list, and that is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama, close loss on the road. Came right down to the finish. It is hard to slide Alabama very far when you came that close to winning that football game, to who we have as the number 1 team in the country. Alabama's going to be just fine. Now, the Texas game, probably should have lost that one. I would say this Alabama team is not as good as they were expected to be entering 2022, but they're not out of contention. They're not a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. We'll see what Alabama can do, but would not be shocked if after losing that game to Tennessee, if we still see another loss before the end of the regular season for Alabama and ultimately kick them out of playoff contention. Number 7 on our list, our first Big 12 team, and that is the TCU Horned Frogs. TCU, look, big-time win against Oklahoma State last week. Trailed almost the entire game, came back to win in double overtime, and we've seen Sonny Dykes has done a really good job his first year at TCU. That team, still some tough tests ahead. They've already passed a couple of big ones. That Oklahoma State win, the Oklahoma game a couple of weeks ago when they blew the doors off OU here. But you still have to play teams like Texas. You still have to play the likes of Baylor, and even teams like in this league like Texas Tech and others are not going to be easy to deal with. So watch out. Let's see what TCU can do, but certainly one of the best stories in college football this year to see that team fighting themselves at the number 7 ranking. So with that, as the last Big 12 undefeated, representing that league and sliding into number 7 in our poll, is TCU legit? Are they a legit playoff threat, or are you selling the Horned Frogs? Was that a lucky win against Oklahoma State? Here's your chance to weigh in. Type R for real, type F for fraud if you think TCU is a legit college football playoff threat or not. Let me know. R for real, a real one, or F for fraud. Let me know what you think of TCU there. Today's show is presented by BetUS, the exclusive sportsbook partner of Chat Sports. If you go to chatsports.com/bet, use the promo code CHAT125 to get a 125% deposit bonus. You put $100 down, you get $125 to spend for free. And you can even bet on who will win the college football national championship. Despite Alabama losing to Tennessee this past week, the folks at BetUS still have the Crimson Tide as the favorites to ultimately take home the title. Ohio State at number 2, Georgia at 3, Clemson at 4, and USC at 5. So, very interesting there to see the title odds there. If you want to bet on a futures bet here of who will win the national title, you can do so, as well as other NFL and college football, NBA, and MLB playoff action. It's all in one place. Chatsports.com/bet, promo code CHAT125. Couple more for you. Let's talk about Ole Miss. And Ole Miss, here they are with Lane Kiffin. And in my lifetime, granted I was born in 1996, but there has never been a better coach at Ole Miss than Lane Kiffin. What Lane Kiffin is doing right now at Ole Miss is remarkable for this program to be in the position that they're in. They've had, a couple nice wins here and there, beating Kentucky and all that. But what I do wonder, with this Ole Miss team is how are they going to do when they take on the elite programs? They still have a gauntlet to go through in the SEC. So while they've had a few moments here and there, there's still some tests that are ahead of this Ole Miss team. Number 9 is UCLA. Chip Kelly's done a phenomenal job with that UCLA program. It's year 5 for him with the Bruins. And I got to tell you, you get the win against Utah. That was a big deal. This is a team that I feel like is headed in the right direction. But you wonder when you still have to face USC at some point this year. You got Oregon coming up this weekend. We're going to figure out how good this UCLA team really is or not. They've done what they've needed to do to this point, but let's see when they have these other games ahead of them as far as I'm concerned. Number 10 on our list is Oregon. Oregon, we mentioned, opened up the year losing to Georgia. Now you play UCLA this week, and you could call this an elimination game potentially in the Pac-12. It's hard to imagine the Pac-12 having a playoff team that is got a loss or two. If Oregon loses, obviously they'd give them 2 losses, they'd be done. If UCLA loses, and that's their 1 loss, there's a lot better teams, I think, potentially that will be in a position where they're undefeated or they'll have 1 loss and they'll be kind of higher in the pecking order than UCLA when it comes to playoff contention. So it feels like a playoff elimination game. It's the game of the week in college football. Before we go, who do you got? You going with the Bruins or are you going with the Oregon Ducks? If you're riding with UCLA, type U for UCLA. If you think Oregon wins, type O for Oregon and let me know in the comments section below. Talking college football as well as the NFL on my social media platforms at Tyler Jones Live, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and everything in between. Love talking about college football. Personally, it's my favorite sport. I'm passionate about it, and that's what we're here for. We're built different. We're passionate about college football here on College Football Now. We'll see you next time as we cover the college football season and count you down to the college football playoff.